Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Donnie Glover, and welcome to the BlackUSA.News morning show. Got a lot to talk about today. Hope you're doing well. A lot in the news. We're going to get right to it. Hope you're doing well out there. Looks like the weather's going to be nice. Make sure you get outside and get some fresh air and all of that good stuff. So on Monday at 7 o'clock, and this is regarding the consent decree. Please plan to join the Facebook Live community dialogue on Monday, September the 20th, 7 o'clock. That meeting will be hosted by the Baltimore NAACP. And if you have any questions, feel free to share them. Available for public comment this month will be the Behavioral Health Crisis Incident Review Protocol for Sentinel Events and Quality Assurance. That is a long title. Second comment period from September 13th to September 27th. Long story short, you can go to bpdmonitor.com. BPD, like Baltimore Police Department, bpdmonitor.com. We have a guest that'll be joining us today. A few things we need to talk about. Did you know, for instance, that college athletes can now get paid? I didn't know this. So we're going to be talking with our guest about that. Now, college athletes, they've been making money off these athletes for years. Now these athletes get an opportunity to get paid. Wasn't able to make it out there with Ben Brooks last night, but Delegate Ben Brooks had a fundraiser. I think this man knows something about Ben Brooks' neighborhood. You know Ben Brooks, counselor?
I don't.
Ben Brooks, he's a delegate out there in Baltimore County, out there in Adrian Jones district.
Oh, really?
Yes.
He must be a first term delegate.
Something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, he had a fundraiser last night. How you been?
You know, I'm nearly fully recovered from COVID pneumonia. And let me say this to all the people out there who say that they are against vaccination and don't have the foggiest clue why they say that. But let me just tell you this. Had I not been vaccinated, the chances are more than likely that I would have wound up where the people who came to the hospital when I was there unvaccinated, I would have wound up where they wound up, which was either one of two places, either in ICU or the morgue. I was hospitalized for, as it turned out, by grace, only 3 days at GBMC, where I received excellent care. But during the 3 days I was there, I personally witnessed a number of people come who, according to staff, were unvaccinated, and that's where they wound up, in the ICU or the morgue. I personally heard 2 codes called when I was there. Now, I don't know whether the codes were for the same patient or different patients, but I heard 2 codes called, and I saw one person, formerly a patient, rolled away with a sheet over their head. So I'm telling you, all this crap about potential side effects from the vaccine, yeah, somebody may have had a severe reaction, and in fact, that severe reaction in 1 or 2 cases may have resulted in serious injury or even death, but that's nothing like the effect and the impact of the virus, particularly with the new strains that are emerging, it seems like, almost on a daily basis. So even though my last shot was in February, and by the time I contracted the disease, it probably was only 30 to 40% effective, because all vaccinations wane over time. There's nothing that lasts a lifetime. The fact is, even at 30 to 40% effectiveness, it still did its job. because it allowed me to come out of the hospital in only 3 days without ever having to be intubated, without ever having to be put in a room with oxygen, and it allows me to sit here today nearly fully recovered.
How did you know you had it? What happened?
I took a test. At first, it was a home test. It was one of those kits, and then I ultimately went to the hospital and was tested, and and that's where the diagnosis was made.
What I mean is, were you feeling bad?
Oh, yeah. I can't really remember the day it started because when it started, I thought maybe I had a summer cold, and then it went on that I thought maybe I got a flu, although I've never really had the flu except when I got a flu shot. But when I had to walk off the golf course. That's when something was really wrong. I couldn't finish around the golf, and then on a Saturday night, I was in a fetal position and sweat through almost everything on the bed, including the whole mattress. It seemed like to me. That happened on Saturday night. Chills, fever, the whole thing. Saturday night, Sunday night. But fortunately, very good friend of mine is a physician, Dr. Zollicoffer, who you've had on your show previously. Z, filled me up with all kinds of antibiotics and steroids over the weekend, so that by Monday morning, the symptoms, all but the shortness of breath, had pretty much gone away. But he's not part of my healthcare plan, my health insurance plan. So when I contacted my health carrier, they said, well, why don't you just go to the ER and see what's going on with the shortness of breath thing? So I said, okay. I went to this particular hospital and presented with shortness of breath, sat in the emergency room for 13 hours without anybody offering me oxygen, left because they didn't offer me oxygen and didn't even have a bed available anyway. Went back to the same hospital, sat for another 4 hours, still without anybody offering oxygen. Left and called a friend of mine who was previously on the board at GBMC, and GBMC, the president of GBMC, met me at the lobby. They gave me oxygen immediately, gave me a room, and then provided what I considered to be excellent care after that. That's what happened.
You have a lawsuit against the people that left you standing for 17 hours?
No. Even if when I say no, because I don't have the time or the interest in pursuing it, I will deal with them in a different way.
It does make me wonder what a layperson would have done had they had to sit for 13 hours and not had the extensive phone book that you have.
If they had gone into some sort of distress while they were there, they may have gotten some attention. I really don't know. I mean, there was again, I'm not going to name the hospital here, but there was one lady, an elderly lady, who was in the COVID section of the emergency room, because they have a special room for COVID patients in the emergency room area. So we were all there together. There was one elderly lady who obviously was on an opiate medication for pain, and apparently she didn't have a pain medication with her, and it had been some time since she had taken her last dosage. She had been there for about the same time I had. She'd been there for about 10 hours at that point. This lady is there in obvious pain, in addition to whatever the COVID symptoms are. She's there for the pain of her other condition, an elderly. And people just walk back. So I stopped one of the people. I said, look, I heard the conversation. I understand you're trying to get straight so that you can give her pain medication. But is it too much for somebody to stop and hold her hand? Is it somebody to stop? Too late for somebody? Is it too much for somebody to stop every now and then and say, look, we haven't just abandoned you here. We're trying to get you to hold her hand, to comfort her in some way. Do you people understand what it is to be sitting in an emergency room for 10 hours with no visitation, because nobody else is allowed in the area because it's COVID? Nobody to talk to, no visitor. And this lady's in obvious pain, and she's an elder. I mean, come on. I mean, where's the compassion here? Now, I know you're overworked. I know you're short-staffed, but how long does it top to say, hold it, touch the lady's hand and say, miss, we haven't forgotten you. Trust me, we're doing everything we can as quickly as we can to get to you. And I'm sorry that you have to stay here in this kind of pain. But nobody did that. Nobody, and that hurt me more than the fact that they didn't offer me any oxygen.
And in that moment, you realized somebody was worse off than you.
Yes. And so I talked to the lady, and I talked to the other people that were in the room, and we was almost on the verge of organizing a patient revolt right there in the emergency room. But I decided to leave. I said, well, it's going to be against medical advice. I said, what medical advice? You haven't talked to me in 10 hours. I said, look, if I'm going to sit somewhere and not be treated, I might as well lay in my own damn bed, which is like my house is 10 minutes from here. So that's what I did. And then I came back because they didn't have any beds anyway. But then I came back at the next morning and I said, well, maybe they have a bed. Maybe they still didn't offer me any oxygen. And when I said, ask them if they had a bed, they said, we still don't have any beds, but we wouldn't have one for you anyway, because when you left, you fell off out of rotation. Even I told them I was leaving. Why? So even if they'd had a bed, it wouldn't have gone to me. It would have gone to, one of the other patients. So that's when I left and didn't come back.
So to say the least, COVID infections are up, hospital beds dramatically in the past 3 weeks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even at GBMC, they had very few beds available. In fact, I think they took a room and made it a bed, made it a hospital room just for me, to be honest with you. But yeah, beds are scarce. Infections are going up, and unfortunately, you've got a bunch of people running around talking about, I'm concerned about the side effects, and it hasn't been. All of this is the Trump effect. This is all about when we look at the states where the anti-mask states, and you say, well, what is craziness is involving? Is what's going on here? This is all about denying Biden any credit for the benefits that are being derived from the vaccine, from vaccination. It's all political. It's absolutely there's absolutely no common sense behind it. How could you in good conscience and common sense say you don't want your child to be protected by a mask in an environment where he's going to be surrounded by people who can't be vaccinated because they're under 12? Why would you possibly say you didn't want your child to wear a mask, or you want to reserve the right to say that my child can wear? Well, you can if you could legally keep him home, but you can't do that either because of truancy laws.
So
I mean,
we live in a country where race and racism is very strong, such that hypothetically, if a white man needed a blood transfusion and the only one he could get it from is a black person, they would rather die. But I'm now seeing that it's not just racism. It's what you're talking about are Trumpsters who they seemingly not only hate black people, but they hate Democrats or Biden too. So is it there's this right wing Trump angle, Trump section demographic that not only hate black people, but they hate Democrats too. Is that what I'm seeing?
Well, Donnie, there's a war going on in this country right now. Okay. And the issue is the war is over whose country is this? That's the issue. Whose country is this? And if you can't, there's no dividing line between Democrats and Republicans. That's a misdirection. That's a shell game. That's to keep people confused. The issue is whose country is it, right? And the fact of the matter is there are a number of people, black and white, who think that the country belongs to white men. Why do I say that? Because as you heard me say many times, you don't have to be white to be a white supremacist.
We have plenty of white supremacists.
Exactly right. if you wake up in the morning every day in a world where you think that the people who are making decisions are there because they were anointed and as opposed to elected, right? If they were anointed, that means you have no ability to change them. You believe that they're there because that's where they're supposed to be.
But I thought our mothers taught us at a very young age. What'd your mom call you? Bobby, Rob, Robert?
My grandmother called me Bobby. I can't tell you my other nickname.
Okay. Well, they call me Donnie Boy. Bobby, Donnie Boy, you are not better than anyone. At the same time, no one is better than you. That was the basic lesson we learned when we were able to talk, 4 or 5 years old. You're not better than anyone, but no one is better than you. I thought we all got the lesson.
Yeah, but we were also taught that the country belonged to white people, and that how well we survived depended on our relationship with them. So they were taught we had to be twice as good. We were taught we were taught that we had to be if
I was taught that.
Yeah, you were taught that. You were taught that you had to be twice as good. You had to measure a standard which was you didn't set and that was movable at the will of somebody else because it was their country. And we were just here. We were here admittedly involuntarily, but nevertheless, we were visitors. We were immigrants, as some people, as Ben Carson would say. we immigrated. We're just ordinary immigrants who happened to find a job working in the cotton field. So we should have been happy we had a job. Okay, so. But the fact is, and Donnie, it just occurred to me. Actually, I was playing golf again. That's what I do. With a friend of mine who had a golf bag that was red, white, and blue. And first, when I saw that black guy, red, white, and blue, and first, I saw red. Why is this guy? And then it occurred to me to have a conversation. What? And he said to me quite pointedly, and who did you teach your kids the country belonged to, or that they what country they belong to? Who do you teach your kids the country belongs to? And that's a very, very important issue. We can't let the fact that a different people happen to be at the moment in a position of authority could mean that position of authority means they own the thing over which they exercise the authority. Because people can change, and we know now that we have the power to change those positions. We know now that we have the voting power to change who's elected to that office or who has that authority. We have the power to do that, and we've shown it time and time again, everywhere from Georgia to Baltimore County to other places. We can change that. So the fact that a white male, may be today the president, may be today the governor, doesn't mean that it has to be that way. And more importantly, it doesn't mean that because they're in that position that they own the thing over which they exercise the authority. They're just an office holder. They don't own the country just because they're president. In fact, they work for the people, supposedly. But who do you teach your children? I can't teach my children. I did that, what is the thing, Ancestry.com. And it said I'm 36% Nigerian. But I ain't never been to Nigeria. My kids are not from Nigeria.
But you're pretty aggressive like the Nigerians, though.
So we have to teach our children that the country belongs to them also. It doesn't belong to them exclusively any more than it does to the white kids or other kids. But it is part, they got part ownership in this thing. We're not coming to sit at somebody else's table. We're coming to claim our seat at our table. That's what we got to teach our kids. And that's the disconnect. That's why we have lost 2 or 3 generations, because they keep saying, who do we belong to? Or what is it that we have? What are we a stakeholder in? That's that's what this fight is about. That's what the war is about today. Who owns this country? That's what the fight is about.
I say the people who shed blood for this country.
Yeah. And you see, because but it goes deeper than that, because see, if you don't own the country, you can shed all the blood you want. If you don't own the country, you can invent all the stoplights you want. If you don't own the country, you can invent all the plasma you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't give you an ownership interest. We thank you for your contribution. We'll give you honorable mention. We'll even give you a month of the year and call it Black History Month. But that don't mean you own the country.
Well, couldn't one argue that Chinese own the country?
Pardon?
Couldn't one argue that the Chinese own the country?
Well, I mean, you can make if you talk about their economic interest, yeah, but ownership in the country, ownership is much more than economic interest. Ownership is a birthright. Ownership, we earned our ownership in this country. We earned, just because everybody here, other than the people who were here originally, is an immigrant. Right? We contributed as much or more to the development of this country as any other group of immigrants have ever done. Chinese were not immigrants to this country during its evolution.
But you said it doesn't matter what contributions we made.
In the eyes of the people who are holding the positions of authority to make decisions. Let me give you an example. The Supreme Court decision that preceded Brown v. Board of Education was Plessy v. the one that everybody knows about is Plessy v. Ferguson. All right, that was a so-called separate but equal case. But the Supreme Court never decided separate but equal. Plessy was a case growing out of Louisiana that Louisiana had adopted a law that said you had to have separate cars for black and white, rail cars, passenger cars on the railroad. Supreme Court said that's okay. They never once talked about what kind of cars they should be. They didn't say that the car for black people should be the same or different or bigger or larger or have more amenities. They never got to that issue. They simply said it's okay to have a car reserved for black and one for white. So they never reached the issue of the obligation of the government to provide the same opportunity to everybody, regardless of their color. That issue was never reached. That morphed into this notion of integration in Brown v. Board. But look what Brown v. Board did. Brown v. Board of Education said that we got to do integration because if it's all black, it's necessarily inferior. Meaning they lacks the opportunity. But yet all of our heroes came from all black institutions. And not only that historically, but if you look at the Drew Academy outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where at the area where they just completed the tournament championship in golf. The Drew Academy, which is a public charter school that you get in by lottery, okay? And to be eligible for the lottery, you have to be of a lower socioeconomic class. The Drew Academy that goes from kindergarten to high school is nearly 100% black, and almost every kid there is performing well above the average in every other public school in the state of Georgia. Every other one. But nobody's saying, hey, well, wait a minute. How could they be doing that when it's not integrated? How could they be doing that well when there's no white kids sitting in the class with them? What happened to this notion of Brown v. Board of Education that in order for them to get a good education, it can only occur in an integrated setting? It's bullshit. That's what it is. That's what it shows. Nobody needs. I tell you, I didn't sit in a classroom with a white student until I got to law school. Does that mean that the education from Salisbury High or Morgan State University was worthless? That I didn't achieve all I could have achieved or would have achieved if I'd been in an integrated environment? Of course, it doesn't mean that. Integration is a false herring, is a red herring. It got us chasing our tails, going in the wrong direction. We should have been going in the direction of the chair of who's making the decisions. That's our objective. The only one issue: who decides, Donnie, and we can't affect who decides. If we focus, pay attention, and do what we can do, what we need to do, we can change who's making the decisions in this country because it is our country.
Should we instead focus on our community?
Absolutely.
Are we? We have a black mayor, comptroller, city council president. We have one of the highest percentages of black elected officials in the country, yet where Baltimore City has a 27% MBE goal, we get like 2%. Where Baltimore City has the highest expenditure per pupil, around 16,000 plus in the state of Maryland, one of the highest in the country, yet we have 70% with a 1.0 GPA. So financially, educationally, home ownership wise, I think we actually own more property back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s than we do now. We're going backwards.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, we certainly own more proportionately during Reconstruction than we do now. But Don, let me say this: just because we the same skin, don't mean we kin. just because we look alike, don't mean we part of the same family.
So do we have more Sambos now than we had back during the fight when we had to fight every day? And I don't mean Uncle Tom's. I got to tell you, and we shared this story last week, that Uncle Tom, Josiah Henson, was a righteous black man.
Yeah.
Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin on Josiah Henson's story, and it was suggested by Martin Delaney, a Harvard medical student, black man, that Frederick Douglass push up on Harriet Beecher Stowe so that she could give some of that $300,000 to Josiah Henson, and she said hell to the no. The publisher said hell to the no, and then these white men started doing these minstrel shows, and they took a righteous black man, Josiah Henson, and flipped it upside down. So now we misuse the term Uncle Tom. We're really talking about Sambos.
Yeah. Well, you know, Carter Grant Woodson said that it wrote a book called The Miseducation of the Negro. Right.
Dr. Carter G.
And yeah, Carter. And
Carter G.
he said that the educated Negro is our worst enemy. Let me explain what he meant by that is a typical Negro who's educated in a system which denies the value of being black, right, it becomes an impediment to people because what he does is propagate the myth of inferiority. And that's an impediment to look, when in Tulsa and Roseland and Wilmington and those places, when the bombs in Tulsa were not for the people, they were for the buildings. Because if they didn't destroy the buildings, the people would eventually come back and they could reestablish their businesses very easily. So the bombs were for the buildings. The bombs will make it as difficult as possible for us to reestablish our independence, to reestablish our ability to have our own economy, to establish our ability to survive, not just survive, but to succeed, not just to succeed, but to achieve beyond measure without the aid or assistance or advice or consultation with white folk. That's why the bombs were there. That's why the bombs were there.
I want to shift gears a bit. There's a new piece of legislation that's passed. As a matter of fact, there's a workshop on it today. But you know that college athletes can now get money.
Yes.
I want to read you this. Got this from Barry Gogle. I'm sure you know Barry Gogle. They have a faculty webinar series, Implications of Supreme Court's NCAA decision. Hear from leading experts on the legal and practical implication of the Supreme Court's recent decision in NCAA versus Alston and the NCAA's decision to open the door to name, image, and likeness compensation. Does that mean we can now get paid? Young people?
I hope it does, but I hope getting paid. I hope that getting paid means that we can, understand the value of one another. The NCAA, makes more money, makes more money than NBA and NFL combined. Okay, division
really
80% of the athletes in Division I of NCAA are black in football and basketball. 80%. So that the richest sports enterprise in the world has almost from the very beginning been fueled by the talents of black athletes, right? And to one extent, I say so metaphorically, and maybe not, and maybe I refer to the NFL and the NBA draft as the modern day auction block, slave auction block. That's until this recent thing of potentially being able to get paid for things, but it will also depend upon the selection that the kids and their families make in terms of in terms of what kind of money to pursue. All money is not good money. What kind of opportunity to pursue, and I'm happy to see, quite frankly, some of the younger athletes, high schools, saying now for the first time, really, they're saying in terms of going to black schools, they said, well, wait a minute. Why should I go to Oklahoma or Alabama or Auburn? I know they don't really want me there. The only place where they want me is on the field or on the basketball court. Why shouldn't I take my talents to Morehouse or Morgan or Lincoln or Coppin? Or why shouldn't I? Why should I allow them to make all this money off of me, and then my own schools go begging for 10% or go begging to get the locker room redone? No, and I'm seeing it come from the young kids now.
I ran across an article yesterday that I don't know everything. Let me just put it out there and show you. You've heard of Alabama A&M?
Yes.
So they're like top in HBCU football, right?
Well, it's their predominant school, but I don't use the term HBCU because I think that's a pejorative term that others have adopted to suggest that what was shouldn't be any longer. It's a black school. And it was intended to be that. And as long as I got anything to do with it, if I had anything to do with it, it would remain that. But go ahead.
Okay, well, Alabama A&M, a black school, the football coach was essentially saying that when they try to compete outside of the conference with white schools,
right,
white people change the rules. So they missed one game because of a fight. And long story short, they got penalized. Yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is there any difference between, I guess it goes back to what you said in the beginning, how when other people make the rules, they can change the rules whenever they want. But the coach was essentially saying that in order to compete nationally, they have to beat the white schools and they have to beat them badly. You can't wait on a decision, just like a boxing match. You got to knock them out, and if you don't, they're gonna systematically get you out of the runners anyway. I'll give you another example. You watch the Olympics. We all watch the Olympics. Why all of the people who shoot the guns and who standing over top of those races, why they all white? Why all of the people taking pictures and running down the field, why they all white? I mean, these athletes are brown, yellow. They not even majority white. Why is it that everybody with an authoritative position, even I'm watching the girls, they kneeling down, ready, set, go, and then they make in the ready position, they make them stand like another 15 seconds. Come on, dude, that lady finger's hurting. Come on, shoot the damn gun. Why these old farts don't move the hell? And when we gonna get some black Olympic photography, where they don't let black people in Japan, in Tokyo?
Yeah,
these are selfish people, man. Just selfish. Don't want nobody else to have nothing. Like a black man can't take a damn picture. Just take a picture.
Yeah. But there's a larger issue. I mean, there's it's not just about black and white. It is very much about economics and cash. The super rich got richer during the pandemic and are still getting rich. Two people, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk together, just the two of them, have more wealth than the bottom 40% of the entire population of this country. Okay, two men, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, together, just the two of them, are wealthier than 40% of the population as a whole. That's a problem. That's the kind of capitalism, and people talk about capitalism as though it's monolithic. People talk about, I'm going to turn this off for a second, wait a minute. People talk about capitalism as though it's monolithic, as though that's one brand. It's like it's the same everywhere. It's not the same everywhere. Free enterprise is not the same everywhere. There's a kind of capitalism that's based upon unbridled and unmitigated greed. That is what has produced the situation that we have in this country and maybe even in the world. We can't right the ship unless we right that situation. You can't have a situation where a person can go to work for the purpose of supporting their families. A person can go to work for the purpose of supporting their families and not earn enough to accomplish their desired objective. You can't have an economy where one person makes more overnight than most other people make during their lifetime, and the guy who works and goes to work every day still can't make ends meet unless he works 2 or 3 jobs. Because the family who was 2 or 3 jobs, who's raising the kids? Who's raising the kids? And we act like we accept the notion, well, they wouldn't be there anyway, the black men, because they're in jail. Oh, they wouldn't be there, the women wouldn't be there anyway because they'd be on the street hooking. Or what? No. If people do, necessity is the mother of invention. People do what they need to do to try to support, they can do to try to support their family. They shouldn't have to go through that. Everybody who works ought to earn enough to support their family in a reasonable fashion without having to work 80 hours a week. We laud and we applaud people who work 80 hours until they start having their heart attacks. I remember one time people said, "Well, if you haven't had one heart attack, then you ain't lived. You haven't accomplished nothing. You must have had at least one stint. Come on, you not yet? Well, you ain't working hard enough. What is that now?
Let me circle back around to the COVID and the health.
Okay.
Where are we? I mean, and if you've been in the hospital any time in the past year, particularly the emergency room, you see people, some of whom are on the cusp of dying. But if you listen to the news, I'm 56. I'm hearing people 47 dying, people 34. I'm hearing younger and younger, and I'm looking at my people. I'm looking at black people because we're already going uphill in terms of dealing with the medical system and doctor's visits, just being normal. Has COVID shortened our lifespan as a community?
Well, Donnie, here's what I believe, and I will liken this to an airplane ride. When you get on the airplane, before it takes off, the flight attendants go through this thing about, welcome aboard and all, and they show you about the air. They say in the lack of decompression, the air mask will drop. They tell you to put your mask on before you deal with your kids, right? Help the people who are in the best position to help somebody else first. Now, what does that mean? That means the allocation, the prioritization of the availability of the vaccine was the ass backwards from the point of view of our community. And that follows the same model that exists across the board. That we got to help the ones who are in the best position to help somebody else first. That means the vaccine should have gone to the very segment of our community that is today most unvaccinated. Those are the ones that we have, because those are the ones when the other people get sick, got to take care of them. Old people don't have the energy or the fact to take care of the young people to get sick. The young people got to take care of the old. So you give it to the younger first. But our whole profile, the whole paradigm, the allocation of resources when it comes to black folk always starts at the bottom. We will help the ones at the bottom. Why is that? Because they know that the ones at the bottom can't help nobody else. We're going to make sure the children and the old people get taken care of. I ain't got nothing against children and old people. Don't get me wrong. I'm old too, or much older than you. But the fact of the matter is, we got to help the ones who are in the best position to help somebody else. And we got to teach them that they have the obligation to do that.
That's the part that's not coming across. Because I'm going to say this to you, and I'm glad it's you. On at least 2 or 3 instances as of late, I've told you about the white addicts in my alley.
Mm-hmm.
I also bump into them at the corner store. Now, these are people who, for whatever reason, have been kicked out of their own community. And they're here because they say, when I ask them, why are you here? They said, this is where the dope at. Okay, right. So they're here.
Right.
But I'm talking about people are dirty. I mean, got needles falling out their pockets.
Yeah. Right.
But they still have this privileged mentality. You can't talk to me like this. If you don't get out my damn alley, excuse me, but did you on this alley? Well, by golly, I do. Now get your hind parts out of my. It's still this privilege. This is the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. I mean, feet black as the street. Needle tracks up and down the arm, up and down the neck. Still this privilege. You gonna come in my alley and talk smack to me? This is beyond psychosis. This is absurd. How am I gonna come in your backyard and tell you how you should be living, and that I have a right to be here because I'm so and so?
Well, you forget the fact it's my country, no matter how dirty my feet are. It's my country, no matter how many needles fall out of my pocket. And as long as it's my country, I tell you what to do, even in your own alley, even in your own alley. Yeah. I understand that, but I'm talking about that. But everybody has taught, white and black, that white folk are superior, and poor white folk are clinging to that because that's all they got. Because the rich folk don't care no more about them than they care about poor blacks.
They've been ostracized by their own families. Their families don't want them.
Exactly right. So they go someplace where they're still on top, even though they're on the bottom. Where do they go? To the community. So communities of color. We can't even be black no more. Now we people of color. Now we communities of color. No, I'm black. And make no mistake about it. If you want to call somebody else, when years ago, we fought when somebody called us colored. We didn't want to be called colored. We were Negro, and then we were colored, then we were black, then we were Black Americans, then we were African American. We can't have nothing to ourselves because if it's ours, that means we get the opportunity and the right to attach some value to it, and that's a decision that we're not permitted to make.
You can't even have a suntan to yourself.
No, hell no. They got a tanning piece. I mistakenly walked into a tanning salon one time. I thought they had a soda machine in it. I just wanted a soda. The lady said, what service do you want? I said, really? Look at me. Do you think I need a tan? Do you think I came here looking to get a tan? I'm looking for a damn soda machine. She wanted to know what service I wanted. Oh, Donnie, no. We're there's a war going on, but more the misallocation of wealth and let me say something about wealth. Wealth means land. Wealth means stocks and bonds and all that kind of wealth is land. In 1862, when they passed the Homestead Act, this was a year after the Civil War started, right? In the middle of the Civil War, in 1862, they passed the Homestead Act. They gave away 270 million acres of land.
They blocked black people from getting it. They blocked black people.
Well, the Civil War was still going on. In fact,
but there were free black people. There were free black people.
But that was a year before the Emancipation Proclamation even. The Emancipation Proclamation went to 1863, right? So a year before the Emancipation Proclamation, and right in the midst of the Civil War, the government passed the Homestead Act and gave away 270 million acres of land from the Mississippi going west. And when the Emancipation Proclamation was made, they gave $300 a head for every Negro that had to be set free.
You're talking about reparations to slave owners.
Reparation to slave owners. We never got the 40 acres and a mule. We ain't get nothing. And so, but wealth is tied to land. Now, what I say to people, with Johnny Chesky, the rest of them, we gonna take this land and we're gonna make it a public. I don't need no more. We don't need public parks. We don't need no more areas where we can sit and lament and think about all the stuff that we should have had that we don't. I don't need that kind. I don't have that kind of time. I don't want more parks. Give me land that I can use to produce income. That's how wealth is produced. Wealth is produced through land ownership. For two reasons. One, that's God is the only one that makes it, and ain't nobody figured out how to replicate that situation.
Well, a lot of black people in Baltimore own land or have rights to land, but we'd rather not go back to the old neighborhood where mama lived, where grandma lived. And so mama's house has now been taken in tax sale. We don't want the properties in the inner city. What's wrong with us that we don't want a property in Baltimore City, especially West Baltimore? But white people, I get phone calls all day and all night about selling my house.
That's because we were taught that in order for us to prove that we were successful, we had to get as far away from the rest of us as possible, even if it meant abandoning our land. That didn't start in West Baltimore. That started in the South. We own so much property in the South, Donnie, and after doing Reconstruction, even after doing Jim Crow, we own so much property. We own hundreds of thousands of acres of property, and some black families still own property in the South. And but we abandoned it too to run north to the big city where we could get a job carrying the briefcase.
Well, you got to add in what happened in Pulaski, Tennessee, in 1865, and that was the birth of the Ku Klux Klan. They also had the White League coming out of one of them parishes down in Louisiana. And if you fast forward from 1865 to 2021, the American government said the number one threat in America is the white terrorist organizations. So we were terrorized out.
Well, there were situations where
Wilmington, North Carolina, they chased the whole. That's like somebody going to City Hall and chasing all your city council people out, going to Annapolis, chasing all your delegates and state senators out. They said, if you come back, we're gonna shoot your head off.
Yeah, but Donnie, most of our loss of land, while it certainly was related to all of that, but most of it we gave away willingly. Most of it we abandoned because we didn't want to get our hands dirty no more. We didn't want to be farmers. We wanted to be sophisticated. We wanted a job with a shirt and tie. We didn't want to put our hands in the ground and get dirty and raise crops and slop the hogs and all that. We didn't want that no more. That's not what sophisticated, educated people. That's not how they make a living. So we abandoned the land. It became heir property in many cases. Nobody knows who the heck it owned. You got to chase too many generations even to figure out who the hell is titled to. We went for the okie doke. We went for the okie doke. We bought the notion that don't worry about who owns the land. Just get you a briefcase and a shirt and tie, and you'll be all right. You don't want to be like them. You want to get away from them. Who is them? Them is you. And people talk about the government as though it's some amorphous thing. Government is just people. That's all it is. Government don't handle life. Government is people making decisions. People who are allowed to be placed in a position of authority that make decisions. And if we want to change things, we got to change who those people are. But we got to train our own. That's like I said, you got to train people. Everybody, just because you're the same skin don't mean you're the same kin. What real leadership, Donnie, means the willingness to sacrifice for the people that you lead. Sacrifice doesn't come natural. It's not intuitive. It's got to be taught.
We have 9 black college presidents between Baltimore and DC. Are they a part of the solution?
I don't know them personally, so I can't say. I can say from observation that there are those in the Baltimore area, like the president of Coppin and the president of Morgan, who I would like to hope understand what the ultimate solution is. But we get conflicted sometimes. You got to how hard to fight and what to fight for. Those are fundamental decisions. I had a meeting with I met with Wes Moore a couple of weeks ago, and he walked in, came to my office. He walked in. I said, I need to say something to you right away before this. But there were some other people that I had invited. He didn't know they were going to be there, but that's because he didn't call back and tell. But I said, you need to understand that I don't care anything about what you consider to be your credentials. I'm not impressed with the fact that you're a Rhodes Scholar. That don't mean nothing to me. I'm not impressed with the fact that you were a combat soldier in Afghanistan, because as far as I'm concerned, neither you nor the rest of American people had any business there in the first damn place. I'm not impressed with your stint with Robin, the nonprofit in New York, because
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood, because I know that everybody on the board was a white billionaire, and most folk don't get paid $800,000 a year to run a nonprofit organization. So I'm not impressed with that. None of that means nothing to black folk. You want to impress me? Take your shirt off and let me see your stripes. Let me see your stripes. Let me see your stripes. That's how I know that we are not just skin, but kin, because we got the same stripes. That's how I know that that you know how to fight, and more importantly, you know what to fight for, because we got the same stripes. See, we let white folk decide what being black is.
We let white folks choose our leaders.
Exactly right. That's another way of saying the same thing. That's exactly right.
We know who Cecil Rhodes was. We know what he meant to South Africa.
Yeah.
And we've met Rhodes scholars before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we also know about the Trilateral Commission. And we know other people's agenda where they've taken our best and brightest. And they are some of them are more misguided than the dude standing on the corner. You know what? I got to tell you this, shifting gears a bit.
All right.
In some instances, I have more respect. You got in Baltimore, in many urban communities, you got the preacher, the politician, and the pusher, the 3 Ps. The preacher, the politician, and the pusher. I have found in my limited experiences that the pusher is more true to who he is than the preacher and the politician. Because the dope man is going to sell dope. You don't know what the politician or the preacher is pushing or why. We got one preacher. Now, he's what you mentioned, Westmore, so we got some other people. Francho just picked up Al Hathaway. And I don't know all the particulars, but a few minutes ago, Al Hathaway was pushing. He was running ACT.
I know.
But he stepped down, I understand. That's what I got yesterday.
Right.
And so now he's Francho's, I guess, black point person from Baltimore.
Right.
The dope man is selling dope every morning, 7 o'clock, if not earlier. But the preacher and the politician, man, they like, you remember back in the day, you lick your finger and which way the wind is blowing.
Well, let me say this. Unfortunately, with respect to the politician, I've never known one who it's like they said in the movie Clear and Present Danger. They said, well, what's the goal of every first term president?
To get reelected.
To have a second term. The goal of every politician that I've known, including the ones that were particularly close to me, with one exception, and that was Fran Mitchell, but even Elijah, who were partners for years, the first goal is to get reelected, right? The problem with on preachers, first of all, then I'm going to separate preachers from religion and preachers from the practice of religion, because we have many pimps in the pulpit. We have pimp, and I'm not by any means suggesting that Al Hathaway is one of them. I'm not suggesting that at all. I know how.
Not at all.
Okay, but that many the bit there's a business of religion, and not just a practice of religion. The religion has become a business in many respects. It's operated like a business in many respects. When you go to the Potter House and you can reserve and you buy a seat license like you do at M&T Bank Stadium, and then you get to sit in that seat based upon how well you tithe. Just like you had to buy your tickets when you get a seat license, even in one of the sports stadiums. But look, what does that say? That means
That means Jesus would, if he were alive, he'd go in there and kick over your ATM machine in your lobby.
That's exactly right. That he would clear the temple. He would clear the temple. But we honor wealth so much. We honor those who ostensibly have achieved the ability to acquire material possessions so much. We are so impressed by Bentleys and $1 million houses. We're so impressed with whatever else.
And gated communities for preachers.
and gated communities. Absolutely. Now, if you
Jesus
don't,
would love the gated community.
if you ain't got a Bentley and live in a gated community, you have not arrived. You've not arrived.
Was Vernon Dobson like that? Because I thought he lived right in the community. Everybody knew him. He could walk to any corner at any time of day or night, and people loved him.
The old line minister. These are you now. You're talking the difference between a minister and a preacher. There's a difference. Vernon, Marion Bascom, John Bryant. These were old line guys. These were guys that believed not in what they preached, who lived according to what they believed, and who believed in the gospel, and who understood what sacrifice was, and understood what it meant, and they were not. Religion is not the opiate of the masses. That's bull. It's not the opiate.
Karl Marx said that, right?
Yeah, he said that. But the fact of the matter is, every species, every civilization, every group of human people from the time immemorial has always acknowledged, understood, and recognized a need to believe in a higher power. Everyone. They've called it different things, and maybe that were polytheism, whatever it is. Some had more than one, some had one, but everybody, every human being has always recognized the need to go pray to some God. Everybody, every generation has. Sun God, moon God, your God, my God. There is a God. Everybody's believed that. The question is, how do you live according to it? That's the question.
We got 3 minutes left. I got to ask you before you go, what the future? We haven't had you on to ask, so I got to just pose it to you. Where's the city of Baltimore headed?
Boy. I'll tell you what. I tell you what. I don't see enough of. I don't see enough of common sense, and I tell you what. I see too much of. I see too much of we and they. I see too much of people in the government acting like the people that are supposed to serve are the enemy. I see too much of that. And if those two things don't change, I don't see a bright future for Baltimore.
Thank you for joining us, Counselor. I'm going to chew on this. This is one show I got to review because you dropped some jewels. Tell them what you do for a living. What kind of clients do you serve?
All right, I'm a procurement lawyer. I have some of the largest white contractors in the world are my clients, and some of the smallest black contractors are also my clients. And I say the same thing to them all, exactly the same thing. And to the white ones who can't take it, I say the phone book is full of lawyers. Pick another one. Pick another one. You come to me, you want to be part of this family. You have to recognize who the head is, and you're going to sit there until the meal is over.
I do have one more question for you. When you found out COVID, what went through your mind, and how long before you was talking to God?
Oh, I never feared the outcome, and all I said, because Donnie, as a father, my greatest fear has always been leaving my children, and not knowing that they had the ability to care for themselves and take care of themselves after I was gone. I passed that point. I got 2 daughters. Both of them are doing well. I'm confident that they've been raised well, mostly by their mom, not so much by me. but I'm confident that they are well grounded, well rooted, and have the ability to take care of themselves in my absence. I'm good now. I get the ability to play with my 2 grandkids, with Genesis, my granddaughter, and Solomon, my grandboy. I'm good now.
Well, I want to thank your family for sharing you with us, because you've been a father, at least to Alexis and myself, and I imagine dozens more. Thank you very much, big brother, and you're welcome on the show. We're glad you're doing well. To God be the glory.
Thank you. Indeed. Bye-bye.
My name's Donnie Glover. We'll be back tonight at 7 p.m. with Sister Biz with Tamara. And both, thank you for joining us. We have programming now 7 days a week. Monday night, we got Shared Spaces with Champ, Quita, and Dason Brooks. Tuesday night, we got Town Hall, / Donnie Glover Show. Last name Rocco Warren from Atlanta. Also, Devon Walker with the Play Black Wall Street game out in Los Angeles, and some of our local friends. Wednesday night, Sister Biz. Thursday night, Black Business Roundtable with Doug Blackshear and Dr. What's the lady name? Oh my God. Dr. Ashley Coleman. She provides some wonderful therapeutic words of wisdom, pieces of advice. Friday night, Black USA Crypto News with Kamal Hubbard. He's out in the East Bay area. Saturday at 10 o'clock, we have Blackout live from New York City with Tasmania Gathers. And Sunday, our new show, because now we are 7 days a week, we have Mike Haney with Black USA, or 60 Minutes in Black USA. Okay, that's a lot to remember. I need to write this down. Donnie Glover, tuning out. See you tonight at 7 p.m. Thank you. Be safe. Stay away from COVID. Wash your hands.